All right, SGA, if you'll go ahead and find your seats, please. I will now call this meeting Kansas State University Student Governing Association Student Senate to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, we'll now move into first roll call.
Okay, you all get me tonight. So, Al Abdullah, Beasley, Belina, Betancourt, Booz, Boykin, Burke, Carlson, Clark, Clements, Cogshell, Cruz, Dowd, Garcia, Gilliland King, Gillespie, Glasscock, Grover, Hines, Huffman, Jabin, Kavanaugh, Kelly, Kerperin, Kidd, Koger, Kuhlman, Leverett, Lux, Matos, Meinhardt, Newport, Orzakowski, Pelton, Phillips, Rodriguez, skipped quite a bit. There we go. Bruce, Rice, Rivera, Schlichter, Smith, Snyder, Snyder Ben, Snyder Blaine, Spellman, Spencer, Stone Street, Wallace, Ward, Watkins, Whitmer. All right. There are 45 present, 8 excused, 10 absent.
Senator King.
You didn't say my name.
I am so sorry.
Anybody else?
Yep, King.
Reichert?
Reichert. Gotcha.
Anybody else not get called? So we'll make that 8 unexcused and 47 present.
Thanks.
Okay, we'll now move into first open period. Our first open period speaker tonight is Greg Willems, President and CEO of the KSU Foundation.
This ought to be easy because I don't have a presentation or any canned notes, so I came to have a conversation. As mentioned, my name is Greg Willems. I've been the president and CEO of the K-State Foundation since February of 2015, so 4 years, 3 some odd months. In that capacity, I manage a staff of over 130 people. If you follow some of our stats, we're raising kind of in the $180 million a year range now. and do a whole spectrum of things for K-State to make sure that we've got scholarships, support for faculty, facilities, and programs. And so I'm here to just have an open discussion with you about anything you want. I do know one subject we want to talk about, I'm pretty sure, around the McCain facility. But I guess I could start by just talking in general about how facilities initiatives emerge and how we get involved. Would that be helpful, or would you just rather go to Q&A and drill it? See nodding heads one way or the other? What would you prefer, Mr. President?
If you could give us kind of a rundown of how that process looks.
Sure, yeah. So as the foundation, we handle philanthropy, and so we have a platform of things we're constantly working on for the institution and really don't have to go for permission to engage donors about scholarships, about faculty awards, and other kinds of things. Capital projects, when they emerge, those start at the campus. So they start in an academic college or a department or a unit. It's usually that academic or unit leader who initiates discussion about what they'd like to see. Usually they gather input from their faculty and staff, and in some cases students, depending on the initiative. But it really starts on the university side. Then they will come to the institution. After that, they're going to come to the president's cabinet with a set of dynamics about the initiative, things about the space, how it would be used, and some of the elements of the financing that would be required. That's reviewed by the president's cabinet. If the president's cabinet believes that it can go forward to the next step, then they go back to the college and they'll do a little bit more review work, fine-tuning, refining elements that the provost or cabinet members would have requested. And then the foundation, we do a little bit of work to evaluate what the fundraising capacity and capability or feasibility would be for that project. So in the past, when I first arrived here, we weren't doing a lot of projects that were purely based on philanthropy. We had a lot of projects that had state funds, maybe federal funds, and maybe a small tranche of foundation funds. But in the past couple of years, I think we've found that we've kind of moved to an era where more of the funds are exclusively from philanthropy. So we do an evaluation of capacity of the donor base, what's going to be needed, and give an assessment of the likelihood of being able to raise that amount of money. From that would go back to the cabinet, and if that feasibility is passed and the project dynamics by the institution's leadership is passed, then it would go to a formal fundraising status. We would go out and do our part. The university would do more of their due diligence. So that's kind of the process. So I think in a nutshell, what the big takeaway is here, that projects do not start from the foundation. We don't make decisions of when, how, and why they choose to do something. We react to their initiative on those kinds of projects. So what questions could I answer about that process?
Are there any questions for our speaker?
Yes.
Pro Tem Bothwell.
Sure. So work on that project began over 2 years ago, and probably first emerged on our radar 15 to 18 months ago into going through that process with the college. Don't hold me specifically to those dates, but it's been well over a year. We evaluated the initial project plan, did the financial feasibility, and determined that the project was too large. It was going to have to be scoped down. That's happened twice. But the actual hardcore fundraising we've been into has been going on for over a year now. We've held 2 different events at McCain, engaging the community in the interest in the project, trying to develop the concept of what was going to be realized there. We've also done some things through web, and we've done a lot of direct one-on-one fundraising with donors for that project. So it's been going on quite a while. Quite honestly, I was a little surprised when just the kind of renderings through the student paper initiated so much discussion about that. I would have expected that awareness was much greater amongst the student body in terms of where that project was. But we typically rely on the college or the unit to really do the deep dive communications with our staff and students about the progress of those initiatives, what's involved in them. Yeah, that's probably the best I could extend on that. Yeah.
Further questions? Senator Beasley.
Hi.
Thank you for coming out tonight.
You're welcome.
So, my question has to do with, because of this realization that communication hasn't been reaching students as well as we thought it was, spreading through the web as well. Is this going to bring about a reassessment of how you guys are engaging the student population?
I think it certainly warrants a conversation with the academy and university administration on how they want to engage the students directly on this. So we would have no problem with that. I mean, we're about as transparent as it comes in what we're doing and how we're engaging. I think it would certainly be advisable to make sure that we're communicating as broadly as we can about those initiatives. But we rely heavily on the faculty to communicate in the early stages when they're developing these concepts with faculty and students about what the needs are, what are the options, the approaches that would be pursued to realize a project. Yeah, in retrospect, I think we've over-relied on the institution's work on that part. So I think we're going to work with the provost, we're going to work with the academic deans to make sure as we take projects forward in the future, we have assurance that there's been good engagement with the students, that there's clarity about the mission and purpose of the project, and expectations are met as we go forward for sure.
Further questions for our speaker? Caucus Leader Spelman.
You're welcome. Okay. Yeah. So dollars, I'm not going to hit it on the penny. When we concluded that 24-hour period, it was just about $325,000 was my recollection. So it was still rolling, and there was still some trickling happening after the fact. So we did that as a marketing blitz and push, and it was kind of a creative approach. So what I'd call philanthropy days at universities are not an uncommon way of doing this. We chose a different approach. Instead of having it a day where you celebrated philanthropy and you invited philanthropy anywhere people wanted to give, we chose to focus it on one initiative that we thought, could we get a huge amount of work done? Could we really make a transformational difference, get a few years worth of secured funding for an initiative? And Cat's Cupboard checked off all the boxes in terms of its meaning, the relevance of the issues that our students are dealing with, donors' understanding and sensitivity and thought about wanting to work with this issue. So we did it primarily through social media, and it was an electronic kind of a cascading campaign. We were really excited about the outcome. So beyond the dollars raised, which are significant for Cat's Cupboard, when you think about that initiative, it didn't exist for a lot of previous donors. We didn't have a food pantry or a lot of food insecurity issues decades ago. So to develop a permanent donor base that would care about that initiative, want to become lifelong shareholders and securing that for the future was the other outcome of this that we were really proud of. So now we've identified over 1,500 individuals who've demonstrated their commitment to funding food insecurity and supporting students through that initiative. So ongoing in the future, we can expand that. We can bring up other initiatives around the food pantry that would allow that to grow. And we'll see where that goes next year. We're going to have, we've created kind of a competition to help these initiatives come forward and emerge. And we'll continue to develop that concept as we go. We chose to do one. We might do a couple of these a year as time goes by. But that's the major outcome, about $325,000. About half of the donors had never given, before significantly to an initiative, or really I self-identified that way. So there were a lot of great outcomes besides just the dollars.
Further questions for our speaker? Senator Coleman.
You're welcome.
Tell us a bit more about what you and the foundation do to help organize and find donors and organize events for philanthropy.
So two things. Finding donors, I think we do a number of things. So I think I would start at the top and say, if you really look at the foundation and what we do and how we're focused, we're what I'd call a major gift fundraising operation. So we rely on...
Super sorry.
Yeah, that's fine.
Time for questions has expired. Is there a motion to extend? Senator Hines. It's been moved and seconded to extend the speaker's time by 5 minutes. Are there any objections? You've got 5 minutes.
I better be quick. So, as a major gift fundraising operation, we rely heavily on relational one-on-one giving. So, we engage alumni, citizens of affluence, corporations on an individual basis with very specific asks for what we'd like them to do. And we focus on levels of 25,000 and higher. So, a lot of the work I do is on $1 million plus asks. So, better than 85% of what we raise in a year is coming from activity at that level. Then we have what we'd call our annual giving or our kind of digital approaches, whether it be phone, whether it be online, social media, web mail, those kinds of things. That might raise or generate about 10% of what we do in a year. So we're a major gift fundraising operation. And so we don't do a lot of events to attract people's attention to things. So galas, golf tournaments, those kinds of things. Those have meaning and merit in certain occasions, but we really focus on relational asking, targeted impact philanthropy, making a compelling case that's going to be meaningful to that donor, and really try to make a difference in that approach. So we constantly are monitoring and trying to grow the base of donors, the alumni and other citizens that we have, and getting them engaged in other things. So that's been a big focus over the last couple of years. People demonstrate a record of where they want to give by their actions. We've tried to expand that base, getting people involved in other activities. So that's kind of the heart and soul of how we do it. Our donor base has been expanding. Last year, we had just under 45,000 individual gifts to K-State. Now, the reality is about 500 of those gifts were over $100 million of our production. So when you really look at the difference in where we focus, we spend a lot of our time at that individual level.
Further questions for our speaker, Senator King?
Yeah, thank you so much for coming today. My main question is, so in the future, if there are if there are projects that the administration is deciding to invest in, how can students voice their concerns and be heard within the foundation?
Yeah, I think we've got to start by, again, working at the connection at the university level when they want to bring a project forward, either through the VP for Student Life, Provost, or one of the academic deans, maybe sharing that with this chamber or in some other mechanism that I haven't even thought about. I think that would be the first way to get dialogue before it gets to our level. Once we get involved, we consider it kind of set and we're launching, we're going to speak to donors, then it's a little late, in my opinion. If there's going to be valid input that's going to change the direction or complexity of what we're going to do, I think we're better off getting it up front. And we'd welcome that. I think certainly with our student foundation and other leaders, we work extensively with them on what we're doing and keep them engaged. So I think we just need a better mechanism to get your voice involved early before we go to the point where we're involved.
Further questions for our speaker? Senator Al Abdullah?
You're welcome.
Thank you for everything. You guys did an amazing job. My question is, have you think about working with alumni office about doing funding in international? You have so many international students they are graduating. Is there any way you think you guys can work with the alumni to encourage these international graduation to give back to K-State?
Sure. No, it's a great question. And so we have done, I will admit, we've done very little international fundraising. We do have some donors who live abroad and have been generous. I've got one that I engage directly with who lives in Hong Kong. He was class of 59. He owns a shipping company. He's been very generous back to K-State Engineering, as a matter of fact. Our reality is that the time and cost and other elements of engaging internationally, are prohibitive relative to what we can get done in the United States. And so I think we have to be very selective about where we go and spend our time doing that. I think as alumni, the Alumni Association engages in their activities, that's a better place for us to start. And so probably partnering with Amy Button-Renz and her organization and figuring out how we get them engaged, how we inspire them to think about giving back would be the best way for us to get started for sure. Yeah.
Further questions? Senator Hines?
Yes, thank you for coming again. So when a college or department comes to y'all to get that funding and that fundraising going, do you ask them what the students and student body that project would serve think about it?
Certainly with programmatic initiatives, that involve students' activities and their interaction for that activity to live and breathe? Absolutely. If it's a facility, typically not. I think we've tried to understand what aspect of that facility will have student services or spaces for student use. I'm sure we'd want to know that. That's a compelling point to a donor. But in terms of the functionality of has the college engaged with students to solicit feedback, I can't say that we've honestly asked that question.
Time. That's another 5.
That was a lot of questions in 5 minutes.
Time for questions has expired. Is there a motion to extend? Seeing none. Sorry, Senator King. It's been moved and seconded. We extend the speaker's time by 5 minutes. Are there any objections? Seeing none, 5 more minutes. Are there any further questions for a speaker? Senator Beasley.
Hi. So not necessarily talking about students going through their like we've already discussed students talking to their college and the colleges being their voice to the foundation, but is there a pathway for students to go directly to the foundation at this time about projects that they are taking seriously and would want to be addressed?
Yeah, I think we've been engaging with the SGA leadership. We've been meeting more frequently over breakfasts. Jill Trago, who's our Associate Vice President for Culture and Engagement. That's a 21st century word for human resources, but Jill does a great job. But she's engaged directly with our Student Foundation and SGA leadership to increase the frequency of connect and dialogue around these issues. And so I think we've had, what, two or three of those breakfasts? 2? So that's one step that we have taken in the last few months. Certainly through the Student Foundation, I think we got 45 passionate students who are engaging with us quite frequently in our activities and the K-State Proud campaign. And certainly, I think we're great ambassadors and knowledge holders into how we function, how we can engage. Certainly, they know a lot of our leadership. I think those 2 mechanisms are a great place to start. On occasion at our board meetings, so we have 3 board meetings a year for the KSU Foundation Board of Directors, and occasionally we have student leadership groups come in and present at those. That's another mechanism or touch point where that voice comes forward. So those are the ones that we have and that I think that demonstrate how we're trying to expand that. I guess we'll find out as time goes by if that's adequate or if we need to expand it further. Yeah.
Further questions for our speaker? Chair Watkins.
Well, certainly programmatic initiatives that we pursue are very unique. I think the practice of the profession, if you will, and what I'd call the fundamentals of how we go about it are very similar across the nation. How fundraising enterprises are organized, how they're structured, legally oriented, is there's quite a variety there. So if you look at in Lawrence at the KU Endowment, they function much like we do as a 501c3 charitable organization, which provides a legal separation. We benefit from that from the standpoint of how we can make investments, how we can manage talent, how we can function the organization to be efficient and effective, generate a budget that's not impaired by some of the state cuts. So I've enjoyed working in this setting because I think it allows us a lot of flexibility and capability to grow. In terms of their focus, most university fundraising operations are focused on major gifts like we are. Some probably would do a little bit more on what I'd call their annual fund or their broad spectrum mechanisms, whether it be phone, mail, web. We just choose to use resources toward the major gift level because that's where we've really received the greatest growth to serve K-State at a higher level. We've been ultra focused over the last 4 years since I've been here in accelerating that growth. Given the contraction we've had in state funding, the other challenges, we've tried to do as much as we can to fill that gap.
Further questions? Chair Booth.
I'm going to say it again, but thank you for coming out and speaking to us.
You're welcome.
So my question was on the 2 times that you ended up reducing the McCain
Now you've caught me flat-footed and without facts. So, in our organization, I have a vice president for finance and operations who runs a lot of our real estate programs, Greg Lorenz. And so, as we had to rescale and rescope that project, he worked directly with Todd Holmberg, Jeff Ward, and Amit Chakrabarty, the dean, to figure out what those components are. And I actually just don't know the answer to that question. I don't think it wasn't a 50% reduction, but they did have to make some choices. Yeah.
Further questions? Speaker Pro Tem Bothwell.
Mhm.
Time.
Time for questions has expired. Is there a motion to extend? Chair Booz. It's been moved and seconded to extend the speaker's time by 5 minutes. Are there any objections?
What's the
Okay,
rec-
5
what's-
more minutes.
What's the record for extensions? Okay. Sure. You bet. Absolutely. So I serve on the president's cabinet along with other vice presidents of the university. Dr. Frank Trace, Jeff Ward, and Amit Chakrabarty, the Dean of Arts and Sciences, came and presented that some weeks ago. I've been traveling a lot, but it's within the last month, and presented a concept of what's the scope of what they'd like to do in renovating some facilities in McCain, where the band and I think some of the performance rooms are, and then also over in the Memorial Stadium area, next to the Purple Mask Theater, there is a vacant space that they'd like to renovate, modernize for the band to use. So that's a brief overview of kind of the description of the spaces and what would be involved in there. My recollection, it was several $1,000,000 in kind of what was kind of the proposed thought and what it was going to cost. So the next step was that was presented to cabinet. We said, nope, it's more than a worthy project. Certainly deserves some more refinement to get our facts tightened up. So Ryan Swanson, who works for the university in their grounds and maintenance and their facilities department, and then my counterpart, Greg Lorenz, are going to work on refining what is the budgeted costs that they put together in that. And then John Morris, our Senior Vice President for Development, and myself will work to look at the feasibility, some of the capacity for that. We'll bring that back to the cabinet to further inform them as here's what it's going to take, here's what we believe the fundraising capacity is. Once it goes through that process and we get to the point where we have a feasible project, then the cabinet would vote on it, and then when it would go to the foundation for actual feasibility testing. That's when we'd go out to individual donors and say, we have this initiative we feel very strong about. Would you be interested in considering a gift of X? And we try to test the likelihood of raising that money from that process. So we do a number of those interviews and then bring that work back. So it's going through the process. I think Frank and Jeff did a very great job showing the compelling nature of, they had images, so the space didn't look that attractive that you guys were working with. So I think I'm optimistic that that's going to continue to move forward positively. It always comes down to cost and capacity, what the donors are willing to do, and there are limits to that. So we'll work through that as this comes forward.
Any further questions for our speaker? Senator Al Abdullah.
I have a question about your role as a CEO and as president. Do you face any challenge that you need the students' body to engage with you and help you in that challenge?
Well, certainly I wouldn't call it a challenge. I think I would call it a spirit of cooperation and participation in what we're doing. So having done this for a long time, I think one of the most important things that we always do as a body of the K-State family, whether it's me with the foundation, it's the administration, it's the student body, it's always to demonstrate and display gratitude. So if you think about some numbers I shared with you, we raised $175 million last year. We're going to approach $190 to $200 million this year. Donors make discretionary decisions to take their hard-earned wealth, their assets, and give those to others with no expectation of return. So I think any and all times that we can demonstrate gratitude, that we can showcase that in how we use a facility, how we respond in the media or whatever. And we may have opinion and thoughts on things, but to say, it is truly fortunate that somebody wants to fund something and they're not required to. I think that's number one. I think also appreciating and understanding philanthropy and how it's present all around you. So nearly every facility we have, many of the programs you're engaged with have philanthropy involved. And just being aware of that, I would say I give K-State a lot of credit. We have a great culture of philanthropy through the Student Foundation, K-State Proud campaign, and just the student organizations and what they do for each other. I think it's powerful. I mean, I've never seen this in another university. I think it's something very unique to K-State. So I would say that would be the best thing, is to demonstrate gratitude, demonstrate gratitude. When you engage with donors, when you engage with other and the faculty, just to recognize that philanthropy is working around you, and that's to be celebrated.
Any further questions for a speaker? Seeing none, thank you so much for coming this evening.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you.
Okay, we'll now move into approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve? Senator Beasley? It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes. Are there any objections? Okay, the minutes are approved. Announcements for this week. First, the SGA reunion will be taking place 4 to 6 p.m. on Saturday, May 11th in the Union JPs. As current members, you all are invited to attend. There is a registration fee of $10 per guest, and if you plan to attend, please register as soon as possible at the link in the agenda. Second, there will be an all-campus retirement reception to honor Dr. Bosco on May 10th. The program will begin at 2 p.m. on Bosco Plaza and will include remarks from campus leaders. There will be Call Hall ice cream served following the program. Third, if you are a senator who is interested in serving on the Joint Commission on Officer Compensation, JCOC, please contact myself as soon as possible. This committee is responsible for studying, analyzing, and recommending levels of compensation for student officers of the KSU SGA. There are 2 student senators who will serve on this committee, neither of which can be officers. Proxies for this week are Beasley for Grover, Clements for Boykin, Dowd for Oxner, Hines for Kerperin, Koger for Newport, Orzakowski for Payton, and Pelton for Almadani. SGA members of the week are Senator Jordan Payton for her work running the College of Engineering Caucus's social media and the Senate Operations Committee for a meeting without being asked to edit legislation this week. The quote of the week is from President Myers this Monday morning: "If you're pleasing everyone, you aren't leading." Moving into commendations, is there a motion to consider Resolution 11? Chair Watkins. It's been moved and seconded to consider Resolution 11. Will the author please come forward?
Resolution 19-2011, Commendation to the Kansas State University NACTA Agronomy Teams by Alan Hines and Casey Kerperin. Whereas the Kansas State University North American Colleges and Teachers of Agriculture, or NACTA, Crops and Precision Ag Teams competed at the NACTA Judging Conference from April 10th through April 13th, 2019 at Murray State University. Whereas the Crops Judging Team consisted of 4 individuals: Nathaniel Dick, Kaylin Fink, Jaden Meyer, and Luke Ryan. Whereas senior Nathaniel Dick was champion overall in crops judging, whereas senior Kaylin Fink was 3rd overall in crops judging, whereas junior Jaden Meyer was 8th overall in crops judging, whereas the Kansas State University NACTA crops judging team continued their dynasty by winning their 16th national championship in the past 20 years, whereas Meyer, Dick, and Ryan joined Wes Jennings as members of the Precision Ag Contest team, whereas Meyer was 1st overall in harvesting, whereas Dick was 1st overall in planting, whereas Jennings was 4th overall in spraying, whereas Ryan was 2nd overall in unmanned aerial systems, whereas the Kansas State University team was the 1st overall team in precision ag, and whereas Coach Dr. Kevin J. Donnelly helped lead these and the teams to success. Be it resolved that Section 1, Kansas State University Student Governing Association, KSU SGA, commends the students and coach on the Kansas State University NACTA competition teams and congratulates them on another successful year. Section 2, upon passage by the Student Senate and signature of the Student Body President, a copy of this resolution shall be sent to Coach Dr. Kevin J. Donnelly, all active members of the Kansas State University Crops and Precision Ag teams, Interim Dean of the College of Agriculture, Dr. Ernie Minton, and University President Richard B. Myers.
Are there any questions or corrections on this resolution?
Yeah, I do have one now. Line 35, it says, helped lead these and the teams to success. It should say these students.
Any further corrections or questions? Is there a motion on this resolution? Chair Watkins. It's been moved and seconded to approve Resolution 11 unanimously. Are there any objections? Resolution 11 is approved. Now be seeking a motion to consider Resolution 12. Chair Booz. It's been moved and seconded to consider Resolution 12. You got it.
Resolution 19-2012, Commendation to the Kansas State University National Agro-Marketing Association Chapter by Alan Hines. Whereas the Kansas State University National Agro-Marketing Association, or NAMA, chapter attended the NAMA National Agro-Marketing Conference in Kansas City, Missouri from April 9th through April 12th, 2019. Whereas the NAMA marketing competition team requires students to apply the fundamentals of marketing learned in the classroom through written and oral presentations of a marketing plan. Whereas the Kansas State University NAMA marketing competition team placed third against 29 schools and consisted of 10 team members: Rudy Wheats, Logan Torrance, Noah Scrimshire, Colby Crockett, Megan Hill, Dalton Springer, Jacqueline Clausen, Christian Callahan, Colin Thompson, and Cameron Jones. Whereas junior Rudy Wheats was awarded the MoCan Scholarship for being an outstanding member of a NAMA chapter in Kansas or Missouri through scholarship and leadership activities. Whereas the Kansas State University NAMA chapter participated in the first NAMA student competition for sales. Whereas junior Lanessa RN finished first and senior Jacqueline Clausen finished third in the NAMA student competition for sales. And whereas NAMA chapter advisor David Lemon helped lead the team to success. Be it resolved that Section 1, Kansas State University Student Governing Association, KSU SGA, commends the students and coach of the Kansas State University National Agro-Marketing Association chapter and congratulates them on another successful year. Section 2, upon passage by the Student Senate and signature of the Student Body President, a copy of this resolution shall be sent to NAMA chapter advisor David Lemon, all active members of the Kansas State University NAMA chapter, Interim Dean of the College of Agriculture, Dr. Ernie Minton, and University President Richard B. Myers.
Are there any questions or corrections for the author? Seeing none, is there a motion? Chair Watkins. It's been moved and seconded. We approve Resolution 12 unanimously. Are there any objections? Resolution 12 is approved. Is there a motion for Resolution 13? Caucus Leader Glasscock. It's been moved and seconded to consider Resolution 13. There you go.
Resolution 19-2013, Commendation to the Kansas State University Rodeo Team by Alan Hines. Whereas the Kansas State University Rodeo Team competed in 10 Central Plains Region rodeos between September 14th, 2018 and April 27th, 2019. Whereas Kansas State University historically has students qualify for the College National Finals Rodeo, or CNFR. Whereas junior Cassie Hoffman ended the year second in the Central Plains region in breakaway roping, qualifying her for the 2019 CNFR. Whereas senior Kyle Ike ended the year second in the Central Plains region in steer wrestling, qualifying him for the 2019 CNFR. Whereas the 2019 CNFR will be held June 9th through June 15th, 2019 in Casper, Wyoming, and whereas rodeo coach Casey Wynn helped lead these individuals and the team to success. Be it resolved that Section 1, Kansas State University Student Governing Association, commends the students and coach on the Kansas State University rodeo team, and congratulates them on another successful year in the Central Plains region. Section 2. Upon passage by the Student Senate and signature of the student body president, a copy of this resolution shall be sent to rodeo coach Casey Wynn, all active members of the Kansas State University rodeo team, interim dean of the College of Agriculture Dr. Ernie Minton, and university president Richard B. Myers.
Any questions or corrections for the author? Seeing none, is there a motion on Resolution 13? Chair Orzachowski. It's been moved and seconded to approve Resolution 13 unanimously. Are there any objections? Seeing none, Resolution 13 is approved. Is there a motion to consider Resolution 14? Senator Coker. It's been moved and seconded to consider Resolution 14. Will the author please come forward?
Resolution 19-2014, Commendations to the KSU Sales Team by Madison Brown, Hannah Heatherman, and Ollie Carmali. Whereas the Kansas State University sales team recently competed against the best and brightest sales students from around the country at the 2019 National Collegiate Sales Competition. Whereas the K-State sales team is housed in the College of Business Administration's National Strategic Selling Institute, which has been named one of the top sales programs in the country for 8 years by the Sales Education Foundation. Whereas the National Collegiate Sales Competition allows students to test their selling skills against peers from other universities with a focus in sales through role-play scenarios. Whereas the Kansas State University sales team brought 2 students, Cecilia Nancaro and Lanessa Aron, both juniors in the College of Business Administration, and whereas Nancaro and Aron took 5th place out of 144 students representing 72 universities. Be it resolved that Section 1, the Kansas State University Student Governing Association, commends the members of the K-State sales team for their hard work and impressive placement at the National Collegiate Sales Competition. Section 2, upon passage by the Student Senate and signature of the student body president, a copy of this resolution be sent to students Cecilia Nancaro and Lanessa Aron, National Strategic Selling Institute Director Don Dieter, College of Business Administration Dean Kevin Gwinner, and Kansas State University President Richard B. Myers.
Are there any questions or corrections for the author? Senator Cruz.
I went by credit hours because that's what K-State went by. Yeah.
Any further questions? Chair Orzachowski.
Sick.
Any further questions or corrections? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion on Resolution 14? Resolution 14. Senator Spencer. It's been moved and seconded to approve Resolution 14 unanimously. Are there any objections? Seeing none, Resolution 14 is approved.
It's me again.
We'll now move into approval of appointments. There's no legislation this week, but if Hannah Cogshell and Umaine Belina will please come forward to be sworn in. Okay, so you just stand over here. You guys will just raise your right hand and say "I do" at the end. Okay, right hand, I do at the end. I do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of student senator and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the Kansas State University Student Governing Association. Okay, and then you'll introduce yourself, name, hometown, major, and favorite smell.
I'm Hannah Coggeshall. I'm from Wichita. I'm majoring in biology, and my favorite smell is probably like after it rains.
Okay, I'm Yamana Girma. I'm from Ethiopia. I'm majoring in agronomy. I'm a PhD student, and my favorite smell is strawberry.
Okay, we'll now move into committee reports. Are there any chairs who would like to give a report? Okay, seeing none, are there any directors who would like to give a report? Pro Tem Bothwell.
Okay, is this one on? Okay, great. Hey there, everybody. I wanted to give some updates on things that I've been working on, tips for you as we end the semester right now, just to kind of let you know what I've been working on for the past few weeks. So to start with, I just wanted to give everyone a reminder of how the submitting legislation process works. I think we're going to talk about this more in the fall, but just so everyone's aware, to submit legislation, if you go onto the SGA OrgSync page, go to Files, there's this handy dandy Submit to Senate Operations folder. If you click on that and do Add a File over here on the side, you can add a file. Shout out to Senator Koger, who already has a file ready for our first meeting back in the fall. So good to him for having something ready in there already. But that's just kind of the way that you submit legislation. So if you're working on anything at any point, just remember it's under Files, Legislation, and then Submit to Senate Operations is where you do that. Another thing that I've been working on, I kind of took from our last speaker pro tem, is this handy dandy Pages tab over here. So on OrgSync, if you go up to More, then click on Pages, you'll see that right here there's a 1920 Resolutions and Bills section. This is a way to track where pieces of legislation are currently in the process. So here. So right here you can see each number of each resolution, the author, the date it was introduced, what it was, and I've got a hyperlink to the actual piece of legislation, what the vote was on it, and then where it is right now. So currently these are ready to be certified, but they haven't been sent out yet. I'm going to send them out en masse next week for anything that still has to be done right before the end of the semester. So you can even see I've got the things for up to tonight already on here and loaded. And it's the same thing for bills as well. So if you look on here, we've only passed one bill so far this semester, but here it is. So I've got to update the vote total on that one as well. But that's just kind of a resource for you to use as we go throughout the year. I'm going to be updating that weekly, so that way you can always know where legislation is in the process. So that was one thing I wanted to let you know that I have been working on. A couple other things for people to know. One thing that there's been some questions about, and I just kind of wanted to clarify, was the committee selection process. I hope you all had a great first committee meeting last week. It sounded like they went really well, and all the committee chairs said that they had a great time. But there were some questions about how people were selected for those committees and kind of what that looked like, so I wanted to just clear up any of that confusion right now. All of you filled out the committee interest indicator 2 weeks ago. When you filled out that interest indicator, you listed what you thought about each of the committees, your top 5 strengths, and what your #1 preference was. In Senate Exec, not this Tuesday, but the Tuesday before, all of the committee chairs each received every person who put their committee first. However, when they got your application, all names and identifying information was blacked out on that application. So basically, committee chairs didn't know who they were looking at. They just saw that they had applicants and they had numbers. Actually, that same night, the committee chairs got a reveal at the end of who they'd picked. So they weren't even fully aware of what their committee was while they were picking it. So I know some people were kind of concerned how that process worked, but really just to let you know that was a totally blind process. So as it was going along, the committee chairs themselves weren't aware who they were picking. So if you have any more questions about that, please come talk to Hannah or myself. But there were some questions about that process, so I just wanted to clear that up. Another thing to note on committees is I know that some people said that didn't get their first preference on committee, and there were other ones they were interested in. And I'd like to give everyone the reminder that you are always welcome to attend all committee meetings. There is nothing preventing you from attending more than one committee meeting a week. It's just that you have one that we're expecting you to attend and you're required to attend as well. So just to get that out there. Another note for next year of something that I've been looking into is name tags. People who were here last year will remember that name tags took about 3 months to order, which was quite a while. However, that was done through DCM here on campus, or the Division of Communications and Marketing. I actually have been speaking with Amy Lee, the accountant for CSI, and there's actually a way faster way to order name tags just through here in the union. However, they are a little bit more expensive. So I haven't met with the people who do those yet, but I'm going to see if we do a large enough group order, if they'll give us like a discount on that. But that's one thing that I'll be doing right at the start of next year, so that way we don't have to like wait for name tags for months, so that way people can just get to know each other sooner at the start of the semester. So be on the lookout for that towards the beginning of next semester. Another thing, just to point out, which a lot of people have done already, is you are more than welcome to stop by the legislative office. If people don't know where that is, that's room number 117, right in CSI, right across the hallway. So we've already had a lot of people stop by, come in, ask questions, but Hannah and I spend a whole bunch of time in there working on different things. And you are more than welcome to come hang out if you like. We have a bowl of candy in there and like a great couch for sitting on, so feel free to just kind of like come out and chill if you want to, if you see us in there. Another thing to note is that on the office door for Hannah and I, we've both posted our schedules, so you can actually see like what times we're available, and we'll be in there as well, along with our contact information if you don't have it already. So those are things just to look out for as well if you're like looking for a chance to meet up with either Hannah or myself. Finally, the last thing that I kind of wanted to ask about right now is like one of my major duties, and that is speakers for open period. I hope you've kind of enjoyed the open period speakers we've had for the past couple weeks, but looking into next semester, I really want ideas on who you would like to have come speak to us, whether you know specific individuals on campus who you'd like to have come speak, or there's just like departments or areas of campus that you would like to learn more about. Please email me and let me know. I would really love to compile a list of things that senators in particular really want to learn about. So please like give me that information before the end of the year, and I'll start reaching out and scheduling those people for all of next semester. So that's all my announcements for now, and I'll stand for any questions that you might have.
Any questions for Pro Tem Bothwell? Caucus Leader Spellman.
So after you submit the legislation to Senate Ops and it gets passed in the Senate, what happens after that? Like, do you need to do anything else?
So after it's been like totally like passed and voted on in Senate, it's a lot of like internal stuff. So the secretary uploads like a certified copy of the legislation, which looks a little bit differently. Then both the speaker and the president will sign legislation. That's given to the accountant, and then it's mailed out to anyone if it does need to be sent out. So that's kind of what it all looks like. That's all internal, kind of on our side, though.
Any further questions? Seeing none, are there any other directors who would like to give a report? Vice President Karmali.
Okay, guys, so over the last 2 months, Jansen and I have met with both the Manhattan Mercury and the New York Times at their request, and they've both brought up different proposals that they think would be beneficial to students across campus. So I'll be sharing first what we talked about with Todd Haverson from the New York Times, then I'll touch on what Ned Seaton brought up from the Mercury, and then I'll give you some of our thoughts on it, and then I'll open it up to feedback from you guys, and then we can see if this is something we want to pursue or we just want to curb it. So starting with the New York Times, we met with Todd, and he gave us basically an option, and there are 3 variables in it to access their online subscription process, and that would give all students access to the regular newspaper they have online, the daily podcast, and this new like education platform / tutoring thing they're doing. It's basically different platforms of subjects that they have, and inside of them are different videos and articles that they believe will help you with whatever course you need help with. So he gave us 3 different price points for that. If we made it available to only students, it would be about $12,000 a year, so about 50 cents a year per student. If we opened it up to students and professors, it would be about $15,000. And if we made it open to all members of campus, it would be about $17,000. So what he also mentioned with this is if we were to do this, they would also invite us to select 2 students to attend a special journalism conference that they hold every year in New York. And they basically do that as like sort of a good faith thing with the schools they're partnered with on this, but also to give more job opportunities and kind of that broader and more diverse experience and knowledge as these students are preparing for the workforce. So I just thought that was a cool incentive, but I don't know how we would go about picking who would get to go yet. He also mentioned that KU just started doing this, and a big reason they started doing it was to incorporate it into their business school, because so a lot of business school students or students who take any business course have to buy a subscription. I know at K-State it's usually the Wall Street Journal, which can be about 10, 15 bucks either a week or a month, not really sure. So we also touched with them on it and asked about what their thoughts were, and they said it was a lot cheaper. So they've started implementing that in their business school to save costs for students because they have to pay for that themselves. And right now they have it in all of their like bigger lecture halls and most of those intro-level classes, and they're trying to get it pushed across the board. So we could look into doing that also if we wanted to pursue this. I know that would save anybody taking any sort of business course a lot of money. And then, even if you're not a business student, you could still use the service as you wanted to. So now touching on the Mercury, he had a similar proposal, but more on a local scale. A lot of what he touched on was doing this with the Mercury would avoid bias politically, either one way or another, because the Mercury kind of just focuses on the Manhattan community and focuses on making sure that everybody is just informed of what's going on. And he touched a lot on how students need to be informed on what's happening in the Manhattan community, and this could be a great outlet to do it. And so he had a similar proposal where it would be about 25 cents a student, and it would cost approximately $10,000 a year for all students. And that would give us full access to the Mercury Online, which is just their digital newspaper. So a couple of our thoughts with this. Last time when Jordan and Lacey were in office, so last term, Todd came and spoke to us, and there was a big issue with that bias factor, where if we partnered with the New York Times, it's kind of not necessarily pushing, but kind of being like, this is the outlet you should be reading. And if you don't align with that, it's kind of unfair for you to have to go and pay for another service while you're also still paying for this one. We did like the educational platform access that they're trying to implement, and they did offer to give us like a couple students in SGA free access to try it over the summer. So maybe we can get some people on that, and we can gain more feedback just by using that for free for the summer. Along with that, we do believe the Mercury would have a lot less of a bias issue because it's just what's going on here. A lot of their news does relate to K-State and what's happening at K-State as well, but we don't know how many students would actually utilize that. So when we're looking at that $10,000 or that $15,000 to $17,000 for New York Times, how many of those students who are paying 50 cents would actually go ahead and use that? And I think that's where we need to evaluate a lot on whether this would be worth it, or like would 800 students use it, or would it be like 10,000 students using it? And lastly, we don't know yet where this funding would come from. We don't believe it would be something we would or should add to like the privilege fee, or would fall under SCTE or anything like that. But if it is something we choose to pursue, the executive branch will look into how we can go about funding that. So that's kind of the overview that I have. Is there any questions or feedback that I can address?
Questions or feedback? Senator Rivera.
Graduate school, architecture, just to give you guys a little bit of context, but I think it's a great idea for the New York Times. I don't know much about the Mercury other than what we got as from them, but bias or unbiased, we have to find primary sources for architecture and as grad students all the time. And New York Times has a lot of archives for architectural pieces. So it would save us money just on the forefront because we have to buy our own subscriptions like you were talking about. So there's that. There's my piece on that.
Okay, further feedback or questions? Intern Coordinator Colburn.
Speaking a little more to the Mercury, like some feedback piece, I think people complain a lot of times about not being connected to the Manhattan community, and the Manhattan Mercury is a really great resource for knowing what's going on in the community. So I think it'd be a really interesting tool for students to get involved in, like plugged in with the community, but also opening up a relationship with the Mercury a little bit better with SGA might help on our side outreach and getting our events and what we're doing out there a little bit better as well.
Chair Booz.
As far as my feedback, I mean, the Mercury costing 10,000 and then the New York Times costing 12,000 makes the New York Times seem cheap, which is kind of interesting. And like I read the Collegian a lot, but I don't read the Mercury very much. So I mean, it would be more local focused as opposed to K-State specifically focused. But if we already have a newspaper that's reporting
Further, Chair Watkins.
So this is a question. You talked about business students, they are required to use Wall Street Journal. Have we had a conversation with Wall Street Journal? So we have, or they have not approached us. Todd approached us with this thing about a couple weeks ago, and then we followed up with Noah Reese, who is the outgoing student body president at KU, about a week or so ago as well. Our plan moving forward, if we wanted to look into that as a possibility, was first to set up a meeting with Dean Gwinner and some of those higher up professors who are tenured and have been here a while and who are using the Wall Street Journal right now, and ask them first if they have explored that option from their end, or if Wall Street Journal has tried to reach out, and then go from there on whether we want to move over to New York Times or try and start a partnership like that. As far as I'm concerned, I don't know if Wall Street Journal has like a partnership like that with any college, or if they do, it must not be that big.
Further questions or feedback? Senator Beasley.
I think you just answered this, but I just want to clarify. You just said that you have or have not contacted business teams and faculty about changing.
We have not. We will if we as a Senate think it's a good idea to move forward and pursue this for all students.
Yeah.
Before I make a decision on moving forward with pursuing New York Times, I'd like to know what the intent business college business is, because I feel like that's one of the major selling points we have.
Okay, further. Senator Hines.
So for feedback, I just would be concerned with usage rates and adding on more expenses, even though it might come out to like a few dollars per student in the end, or whatever it might come out to. Like every penny counts to students, and then if we're not utilizing it fully, then I don't think it's not necessarily in the best interest of the students.
Okay, further questions? Senator Coker.
Would this, if we did decide to partner with one of these newspapers, would this be something that would be tacked on to the students, or would this come from pre-existing funding?
That's a hypothetical.
I could try and answer.
But funding.
Where is the funding coming from?
Yeah, so that is something that we would definitely look into. I don't know if, or I know that we wouldn't be putting on the privilege fee or something like that where it's run by student tuition dollars. I don't think as well it would be beneficial or taken well by students if we said, okay, 50-cent increase for students and that showed up on their cases bill. I think that would just be pretty dumb for that to be like that. So we would obviously look to either finding a grant and applying for that, or seeing if there's different options within the College of Business, if they have funds already allocated or in like some sort of reserve bank, or looking to those options.
Okay, further questions or feedback?
Time.
Time for questions and feedback has expired. Is there a motion to extend? Pro Tem Bothwell. It's been moved and seconded to extend the time by 5 minutes. Are there any objections? All right, 5 more minutes. Further, Caucus Leader Spellman.
So in terms of feedback, I really like the idea. Just looking at like civic engagement and trying to push the student body to become more civically engaged, I think that's a really good opportunity. Of course, we do have to try and promote it as much as we possibly can. So if students aren't going to use it, like we have to tell them that it's out there and it's an opportunity that they can't use. Similar to what other people have expressed, I think we should look into Wall Street Journal as well, just from a balance. I read both and I appreciate both equally, so I think that's something that we should also look into for business students, is saving them money. And what other questions you have?
Okay. Further, Senator Cruz.
Is this something that could, does it have to be something where it serves the entire student body, or could it be college-based for those colleges that are looking to set?
Yeah. So we talked about with Todd, and it's basically, he was like, it's all or nothing, just because that is such a minute cost when you're looking at, you know, how many students it would serve, and they obviously know every student's not going to use it. We'd be lucky if 50% of the students were using it. So for them, it's really, they've already accounted into that for the pricing, I believe.
Further questions or feedback? Caucus Leader Kidd.
Thanks for coming tonight. Can you speak to
tip survey to where we had like data and analytics to show how many students are actually like picking up current physical newspapers or how many students are actually looking at the different articles from the police or whatever online or anything like that? Would you have to refer to Advisor Harlan? I don't know, maybe.
So the only thing I can offer as far as the past program, it was pretty antiquated in the fact that it was open bins and people just grabbed. So we couldn't tell how many papers were being picked up or what the ratio of faculty to students was. It cost about $60,000, but we offered 5 papers, which was a abnormality for them. They never do that many traditionally. So we don't really have accurate numbers though.
Any further questions or feedback? Senator Clark?
Yeah, I just myself don't want to be paying for something that's kind of inherently biased when it comes to the New York Times, and I just wanted to make that clear. And maybe I'm the only one, but one is enough in that situation, I think.
Okay, further questions or feedback? Senator Gillian King.
Do we have any data about like if there's student demand for this? Have we done research on that?
So, yes, okay. So we personally do not, but when reaching out to NOAA, they have like 800 students using it right now that are paid for. That's like kind of like a try it, see how it goes. And so likewise, the New York Times and Todd emailed Jansen and I, and he's like, if you guys want to give it a go, give me the emails of leadership or whoever wants to try it out. So maybe we could do that, and we could pick like specific people covering all colleges or different types of majors that may have utilization for this, and then you guys would kind of be the test survey to see how would this be receptive to your colleges, to your constituents you're representing, and then we can look at how beneficial will this really be, and then that can be a conversation we have again in the fall on if we want to pursue it and find the funding.
Senator Rivera.
Just to reiterate, and like I liked Senator Kidd's idea of a survey for feedback. I think if we can find some cost-effective ways to get more primary sources onto campus, it would be great. Being that the library budget was cut for new academic journals, because graduate students need to do research, and many students should be doing research. So, opinion, by the way, but yeah.
Any further questions or feedback? Okay, seeing none, are there any other directors who would like to give a report? President Penny.
Sweet. Just a few things for you this evening, and I'm going to start with an update of what we did today, look at what's going to happen during the summer, and then I'm going to come back and touch on the foundation, because I know there's many things that we have been working on that Greg has not seen after our initial meetings with him. So today, myself, Ali, Jordan Lacey, and our legislative directors all went to Topeka to advocate for higher ed funding. And we got some pretty good news yesterday as well, where both the House and the Senate passed out a bill for $33 million. And since they both passed that out and it's going to conference committee, there's a very slim chance that they will touch that number very much. And so that is looking pretty good, when earlier, like in January, we were thinking that would be like between 8 and 12 million. So good news there with higher ed funding. Another thing that we're going to be looking at and have some meetings coming up with is the sustainability of Cat's Cupboard. Dr. Bosco, a lot of philanthropists like the ICEs are also in those conversations, and so those are things that we're going to keep you updated on throughout the summer. And then lastly, talking about the foundation. As Greg spoke on earlier, SGA leadership has met with KSU Foundation leadership a few times now. We go and we have breakfast with them and discuss a lot of these, discuss some of their priorities, our priorities, and then we bring up any student concerns for there as well. One of those that we brought up last time had to do with McCain. So after we brought up that, I sat down with Greg Willems, and asked him probably almost every single question that you guys asked him today too. So good job on that. But figuring out where we go from here. We're already very progressed in what happens now and engaging that student voice with those foundation projects. So there's three different things, three different actions that we are already taking to engage that. And I'll speak a little bit on that because Greg is not fully aware of all those things. One, the foundation staff meets every month, and so we have went and spoken with the leaders of Student Foundation and are working on a collaboration to go and present at those staff meetings every month, and that's something that that Greg invited us to do as well. With that, going and speaking to the board of directors on some student or just on the student perspective on campus and bringing that younger voice to those board meetings. Two, we've been having a lot of conversations with Provost Tabor. Greg spoke a lot about how that progression of a project goes. It goes from a unit or department to the provost to cabinet, then to the foundation. So we searched for where's that area that students can bring their voice in, and really that area is with the provost. So we've had a conversation with Provost Tabor about what that looks like with getting students involved. And I know there's a question asking like, why don't students know about a lot of these projects and ideas sooner? And even if Greg didn't say it, I think one of those large issues is that if students are in on some of those very premature conversations where they are talking about very high dollar amounts for some of these projects, and then later on that gets scaled back down 3 or 4 times, that just kind of creates a little bit of a media explosion and concerns like, we were promised or thinking about 20 million, but now this project's only going to be 4. Like, what happened there? And so I believe that is kind of why they don't invite a lot of student voice in those conversations. So what we are working on with Provost Tabor is creating more of a task force, which would be a private committee meeting, meaning everything in that would be confidential as well. And so we are in conversations with him that will progress through the summer so we can jump on top of that. And then lastly, with Greg Lorenz, who Greg, the president, spoke about earlier, we are starting, along with Greg, a student committee to provide ideas and initiatives with the real estate projects with the foundation. One of the examples that he gave us was the foundation at Nebraska has like swings like in the lobby of this new building, and everyone in the foundation is like, wow, that's like the dumbest thing. And then he's like, well, if we had some students in on some of these choices, we might realize that's not so dumb. So small things like that, and we'll be jumpstarting that in August as well. So I'd be happy to take any questions regarding student voice in some of these foundation projects and the next action steps there.
Any questions for President Penny? Senator Kelly.
Nancy, you mentioned that the state's going to give us a great deal more money. Can you share with us what do you know what the tuition increase will be this next year? Has that been finalized?
Is that public? Can I share that? I think it was brought up in tuition and fees.
Oh, I thought what you were saying is that the state or that a decision was made on the allocation of the money.
Yes.
It's going to Congress committee. So based on that number, what is that tuition rate?
Yeah, and so that $33 million is not going to do very much to what our tuition is going to look like for next year. The biggest thing that will adjust tuition is COLA, and COLA is cost of living adjustment. So what that does is bring a 2.5% increase to all state employees, and that includes every faculty, staff on this campus, so about 5,000 employees. So when you have like $500 million going to staff, raising that 2.5%, that really creates a large jump in our budget. So when we're looking at those higher tuition increases that could potentially happen, a lot of it is more from COLA passing or not, and we will not know that for a few more weeks. And that 2.5% increase to salaries is something that is mandated by the state as well. So it's not something that Cindy Bontrager, just believes in. It's not something that is put on here at the university, but it's something that's mandated by the state. And that'll be about $6 million that we're going to have to raise or that we're going to have to raise back through tuition to fill that hole, and the state will bring back in about 1.8 million of that. So they mandate the 2.5% increase. They provide a little bit of money, but then they put it on the university, hence the students to pay the rest.
Further questions? Follow up?
Follow up on a different strain. You mentioned the task force, right? That's going to be working with students and then the foundation, right? Because President Williams came up here and talked about how they come up with this list of priorities, and how students need to be involved, right, and at the table in those discussions. So I guess my question is, what exactly are you thinking about this task force? What would it look like? Who would be on it? What would it consist of?
Yeah, we are very much in the premature stages of this conversation. I think some of the most important things that we're trying to figure out now is foundationally what that would look like. Is that something that Provost Tabor would reach out to us with, and that would be a private conversation with SGA leadership, or those different conversations where we need a representative from each college, or mainly from the college or colleges that it would affect, such as the McCain. We might look a little bit more into arts and sciences. So we're just starting those conversations, but we'll get all that nailed out hopefully over the summer.
Further questions? Seeing none, we'll now move into introduction of legislation. Is there a motion to consider Resolution 15? Senator Coleman. It's been moved and seconded to consider Resolution 15. Will the author please come forward?
Okay, just quick background on this resolution and the next resolution. What we did as SGA leadership is we made resolutions basically outlining our goals and priorities for the years. So ours is focused more on students all across campus. Theirs was more internal and Senate. And why we did this was so you guys can hold us accountable, and we can keep following up with you guys on these, and we can keep you informed on what's going on, to kind of remove that barrier of knowledge and insight on what's happening between the different branches. The reason it's in introduction to legislation this Thursday is so that next semester, right when we come back, it will be back on the agenda, and it will be back fresh in your minds, and you can go back to holding us accountable once again. So with that being said, Resolution 19, 2015, SGA Executive Branch Priorities for the 2019-2020 term by Nathan Bothwell, Hannah Heatherman, Ollie Carmale, Jansen Penny, and Sadie Polson. Whereas the executive branch has drafted this resolution with the intent to clearly outline our priorities for our coming term so that we can be held accountable throughout our year in office. Whereas the executive branch will work diligently to combat the student-based issue of food insecurity on campus through different initiatives that will increase the presence and supplies of Cats Covered. Whereas the executive branch will increase focus on sexual violence prevention and awareness by working closely with the Sexual Violence Prevention and Awareness Director and Aggieville bar owners on various partnerships and efforts to promote a safe atmosphere both on and off campus. Whereas the executive branch will work on projects to promote well-being on campus and will collaborate with key campus stakeholders within the Wellness Coalition to ensure students' well-being is one of the utmost importance. Whereas the executive branch will work to ensure more student input and voice is present within the budget modernization process, strategic enrollment plan, and procedure for approving privately funded capital projects through the KSU Foundation. And whereas the executive branch will work to see the SPIRIT program come to fruition and ensure diversity and inclusion is focused on through working with the Multicultural Student Affairs Director, Campus Unity Director, International Student Affairs Director, and non-traditional Student Affairs Director. Be it resolved that Section 1, the executive branch is committed to focusing their time and efforts to see substantial improvement and changes on these five priorities: food insecurity on campus, sexual violence prevention and awareness, well-being of students on campus, student voice and input in administrative processes and change, diversity and inclusion on campus. Section 2, upon passage by the Student Senate and signature of the Student Body President, a copy of this resolution shall be sent to all members of the 2019-2020 Executive Branch Cabinet, Vice President for Student Life and Dean of Students, Dr. Pat Bosco, Assistant Vice President for Student Life, Dr. Heather Reed, and University President Richard B. Myers.
Are there any questions or corrections? Intern Coordinator Colburn.
Since when this resolution passes, Bosco won't be here, are we planning to change that to who that would be?
Yes, we will change that before next time.
Any further questions or corrections? Seeing none, is there a motion to consider Resolution 16? Senator Koger. It's been moved and seconded to consider Resolution 16. Will the author please come forward?
Resolution 19-2016 SGA Legislative Branch 2019 to 2020 Priorities by Nathan Bothwell, Hannah Heatherman, Ollie Carmali, and Jensen Penny. Whereas the legislative branch has drafted this resolution with the intent to clearly outline our priorities for our coming term so that we can be held accountable throughout our year in office. Whereas legislative branch leadership believes in the ideals set forth in Resolution 1949 and will advocate for the creation of a formalized body to facilitate changes to the Elections Code. Whereas changes to Diversity Programming Committee are discussed most years, but a lack of continuity in the committee has made seeing out changes challenging. Whereas graduate senator vacancies can be difficult to fill, while there are regularly undergraduate students seeking an avenue for involvement within Student Governing Association. Whereas both the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Standing Committee and College Caucus System have the potential to conduct meaningful outreach in their respective areas of student life. Whereas students need to be educated on where their privilege fee dollars are allocated, especially as the fee rises due to declining enrollment. Whereas student senators need to be educated on their college-specific fees to promote awareness and to advocate for affordability within their respective college. Whereas Chapter 5555-0211 of the Kansas State University Student Governing Association statutes outlines the attendance policy for student senate and standing committees, and whereas legislative branch leadership will strictly adhere to this policy for the 2019 to 2020 term. Be it resolved that Section 1, the legislative branch is committed to focusing its time and efforts to see that formalized bodies meet to evaluate the merits of the following sections of the governing documents and to recommend changes as needed. Number 1, elections regulations. Number 2, diversity programming committee structure and regulations. And number 3, vacancy procedures. Section 2, the legislative branch is committed to increasing efforts in the following areas. Number 1, student engagement through the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Standing Committee and the College Caucus System. Number 2, fee education and transparency. And number 3, committee attendance and engagement. Section 3, upon passage by the Student Senate and signature of the Student Body President, a copy of this resolution shall be sent to all members of the 2019 to 2020 KSU SGA Legislative Branch, Vice President for Student Life and Dean of Students, Dr. Pat Bosco, Assistant Vice President for Student Life, Dr. Heather Reed, and University President Richard B. Myers.
Any questions or corrections? Chair Booz.
Yeah, we can make that change.
Any further questions or corrections? Senator Rivera.
Yeah, so we've, Hannah and Marcus, I know Marcus has left already, but they've had meetings already. So one thing that's kind of been a problem in the past few years is that like we can't fill graduate senate seats. So right now the graduate graduate school has 8 seats in total, but currently I believe we have 5 filled at the moment, which is pretty high, and it's higher than it was last year, which is really good. However, we've had issues where once we contact everybody on the elections results list, if they don't want a seat, then it moves to graduate student council to recommend people. And we've had problems in past years where they either haven't recommended people, where those individuals still don't show interest. So we've had a lot of like empty seats throughout the year. So the graduate school isn't getting the representation that it deserves. So some of the conversations we've talked about is setting like a hard deadline partway through the year. So hypothetically, I know a date that was mentioned was October 15th, but we're still discussing that, where the Graduate Student Council has to recommend nominees by if everyone on the elections results has been contacted already. And by that point, if like those, like if the graduate school still doesn't recommend anyone, those seats would then be proportionally allocated to undergraduate student senators depending on like the makeup of like the graduate school senators for the year. With that, we would subtract 1. So then there would still be at least 1 open grad seat for the rest of the year. Does that kind of make sense? No, these are in no way finalized. This is just like an early discussion. Really, the problem has just been like we have these empty seats that keep going empty throughout the year, and we think that it's probably important that students have representation. So again, this is super early, and we're definitely going to be talking to all the grad students about it as we move into it for the next year.
Senator Kelly.
Will there be an opportunity for senators to have input on like this list of things that Senate needs to focus on?
If senators would like to have input, I think we're totally like open to that. Again, like this won't be passed until the fall, so please reach out if you'd like to have some input on this.
Further questions or corrections? Seeing none, I will now move into second open period. Are there any second open period speakers? Yeah.
All right. So hopefully you all saw an email from Hannah with a demographic survey. So this is one of the things that as DEI we are charged with doing is a demographic survey. So this is like a preliminary survey that we're trying to do kind of now, and then we can do another one in the fall that'll have changes and things based on the results of this one. So I guess I say that because a lot of the questions might not be perfect, and we'll be looking for feedback if you have suggestions for how to kind of tweak it and make those changes as we move forward. So we'll ultimately be looking to maybe do this again in the fall and make those changes for next year. And then additionally, all of the questions are optional, so skip any questions you don't feel comfortable answering. The survey is anonymous, and but we would like you to answer every question you can to the best of your ability, just so we kind of have the best information and data that we can have overall. So yeah, that's the demographic survey in a nutshell. If y'all would take some time right now to fill it out, that would be greatly appreciated. We'll be sending it out to everybody, all the branches, and trying to get as many results in as we can. So with that, are there any questions?
Any questions for Chair Orzechowski? Seeing none, do you want to go ahead and take a couple minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll give you guys like 3 minutes to work on that.
Yeah, it should be pretty quick.
Can I see a show of hands on who's still working?
make any changes tonight. So, but yeah. He had mentioned it, but if Caleb wants to.
Is anyone still working?
And I'll reiterate that actually right here now.
Tell, can we move on? Okay.
Can
All
I
right.
say one last thing? Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if y'all do have feedback after going through the survey, you're like, this question is missing or this answer is missing from one of the questions, just shoot me an email with that feedback. And as a committee, we'll discuss it and we'll make the, the necessary changes to the survey moving forward. So thank you.
Any further second open period speakers? Seeing none, we'll now move into reference of legislation. Both resolutions 15 and 16 will be referred to the Senate Executive Committee, and we'll move into second roll call.
All right. Al Abdullah. Beasley. Belina. Betancourt. Booz. Burke. Carlson. Clark. Clements. Coggeshall. Cruz. Dowd. Garcia. Gilliland King. Gillespie. Glasscock. Hines. Huffman. Javin. Kavanaugh. Kelly. King. Coker. Kuhlman. Leverett. Lux. Matos. Meinhardt. Orzakowski. Pelton. Phillips. Preuss. Rice. Rivera. Rodriguez. Reichert. Schlichter. Smith. Snyder. Snyder Ben. Snyder Blaine. Spellman. Spencer. Stone Street. Wallace. Ward. Watkins. Whitmer. All right. There are 45 present, 9 excused, 2 absent.
Okay, I'll now be seeking a motion to adjourn. Caucus Leader Glasscock. Second. That's September 5th. Put it on your calendar. So we'll adjourn until September 5th, 7 p.m. right here.